So another thumping against an out-of-form Manchester City, away in Manchester, but not without a little bit of hope, which is a bit of a strange one, especially when you consider the scoreline being so heavy, as has become somewhat commonplace over the last year. Whether you put that down to Lopetegui, or whether you put that down to, because this was still happening under Moyes at the end of last season as well. So it's still on 2024. Look, I think we had a fairly bright first half, it has to be said. I was actually quite impressed. I was quite pleased. Yes, there was no finished product on that, which is a bit of a shame, of course. But as I say, I think that if we'd have kept up that performance for the rest of the game, I'd have been quite happy with that. Even though, as I say, we know the end result, we know it didn't end up favourably. I'd have been quite happy just knowing that we kind of gave it a go, right? But the problem is, it obviously didn't stay that way, and we did roll over a bit in the second half, and really just kind of took our minds off the game. So quite disappointing in the end, which is quite normal. So as I did say, obviously there were some positives. So to think about those, Summerville I think was one of them. It was really I felt like he really looked like he was going after the game. I think there were a couple of wasteful chances on his side. Obviously, nothing's perfect, but I do think that, he was a real bright spark of energy when we really needed it. Drawing the fouls in as well, which was good. Again, we are talking about an out-of-form Man City, so I don't know, how well that translates against any other team, or certainly an in-form Man City, as I do believe that we were still today playing an out-of-form Man City, which is actually quite scary. Paqueta, I thought, was a lot better today. Paqueta was better. Again, not perfect. I think there were a couple of times where, you see him putting off tricks in our own half, which I'm a little bit worried about. I just don't think that, we're at that stage in our season at the moment where, we can continue having play like that from that kind of player. I do think that's slightly optimistic and slightly out of keeping with where we sit in the table. But look, I think that, again, there was a little bit of fight there. It seemed like he was quite up for today's game. You can read into that how you will. A little bit suspect for me, I've got to say, given the history with Pep. Seems interesting that today's the game he gets up for. I do feel, and I have done for a while, that there are a few players in our squad that have been getting a little bit disenfranchised. And those players, in my mind, are Kudus, Alvarez, and Paqueta. Now, the reason why I think that is because I believe they may have been under some kind of impression or belief that West Ham will be their stepping stone to greater things. Greater things. Such as moving on to Man City for Paqueta. We all knew that's what he wanted to do. We'd pretty much accepted it. I think quite a few of us are pretty gutted that didn't happen, as the reinvestment we'd have been able to get. And I think that's part of the model or the project that we've got going on, right? The Leverkusen type of model, sell one of your best players, move on, right? Alvarez, again, he was doing the old, as Gonzo would put it, flashing your knickers type of scenario, right? Where he was saying, oh, well, I just don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do next. I could do... But, maybe I'll stay around or something, right? Fills us with a great amount of confidence that he wants to be here. Well, he didn't get the move either because of his injury at the beginning of the season. I fully believe if he wasn't injured, he'd have been gone. So that's Paqueta. Couldn't go because of a gambling controversy. Alvarez wasn't able to go because he has... because of his injury. And then now, Kudus, I don't think he will be able to get his move at the moment because FFP's come in. People don't have as much money anymore to spend 85 million to get you out of a contract in your release clause. And now we have a Jared Bowen injury, so we're not particularly looking to try and sell a right winger at this point. Although Guilherme has looked fairly bright, but he's still very young. So I do feel as though we've got 3 disenfranchised players there, and all 3 of these players have not been firing for us. So for me, it's pretty clear. I don't know how you guys feel. Let me know. So back to Kudus. For everything I've just said, I do think that Kudus actually had a fairly good game today. Now, one massive caveat. His end product was horrendous. The final decision he made just seemed to be wrong every time today. But if he'd have crossed instead of shooting and shot instead of crossed when he was doing those things, we could have had a couple of goals today. If you're not feeding Fullkrug, he won't score. Now, that's not a personnel problem. That's a tactical problem. Well, you could argue it's personnel if you think about Kudus in particular, right? But what I mean by that is it's not a Fullkrug problem. I don't care what striker you get in. If you don't give them service, they're not going to score. This isn't Antonio, who's not really a striker. He's more like he's a winger, right? He's come in, he works really hard. He's just so strong and whatever. We can chuck him in the middle and use him as a target man. He can hold up play, right? But really, he's still playing a bit like a winger, right? He's still playing like Bowen, like cutting in and whatnot, right? So that's why when he says himself, to play this way in West Ham, you have to be feeding off the scraps. You have to be alert and going for it. But if you're a typical centre forward where you're staying in the middle of that 6-yard box and taking those lines backwards, and you're supposed to be in that centre, you live and die based on your service. And if you're not getting it, I don't care who it is, Fullkrug or not. Fullkrug's a good player. We're not going to score. And there's case in point with probably the second time we actually put something across in a decent way. Fullkrug's there and he puts it in the back of the net. Not surprising to me for one moment. And I'm so happy for him as well because, yes, he has had some questionable things in the media. We've heard, perhaps that his desire is to move on, which is understandable. I mean, the guy's been injured for like 4 odd months. He's hardly had the best time in England. You can't blame him for having a bit of a sour taste in his mouth. But what I'd like to see is this goal and the goal against Leicester, which, by the way, the games were fairly similar, I think, for me, in the sense of the way that we kind of played quite positively but got caught on the counter. His ability to score is evident. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater here. Let's try and nurture this. Yeah? And get him firing again. I really do think that if we play in that way, which we don't right now, but if we play a bit more conscious that we have a centre player there, a proper full-on striker, then it's an option for us. Whereas at the moment, our front 3 are very much individual players. They don't really feed off each other so much. So, yeah, a bit more teamwork in that area wouldn't go amiss. Look, for me, that was kind of let's say, on the positive side of things again, and I might be a bit naive here, I might be whatever, but yes, it was 4-1. I sort of see that strangely kind of like 2-1, right? Now, bear with me here. Okay, so Sofal's own goal, super unlucky. Given to him as an own goal because it's it comes off his boot. It wasn't goal bound, okay, until it came off a so foul. So that is an own goal. Incredibly unfortunate. On any other day, that doesn't go in, right? It's just a bit of bad luck for us. And this one's a bit more of a stretch. With that pass to Alvarez, right? A terrible pass, yes. Foden's goal. He still has to put it away, but just really sloppy, right? So if we take those two away, I think they've got two legitimate goals there, and that's 2-1. And that doesn't seem like such a bad scoreline. Now, forgive me for my incredibly creative accounting, but hopefully you sort of see what I mean, right? But as I say, that the kind of scary thing there is that this still was very much an out-of-form Man City team. They were still quite open. They were there for the taking. We did look quite good against them. But ultimately, their quality up front is, and how being organised and their quality up front is what won them the game. Tactically, I have to give it to Lopetegui. I think he didn't really put a foot wrong there. I think that was fine. I think that's just on the players on the field now. Sometimes at one point you have to hand it over to the players on the field and they've got to put it in the net, right? I think Lopetegui set the team up in the right way. We are sorely missing Bowen. I do think that Souček pass, that assist for Fullkrug, if that was Kudus on the ball there, that's a shot and that's going in the side netting, not a pass. That was the level of indecision that we had there. That was where having the right person on the ball at the right time got us the goal. And that's just knowing each other, playing with each other, not being selfish, playing for the team, not for yourself. And it goes back to that disenfranchised part there with Kudus, right? Where we think he was just desperate for a goal here. I think he wanted to put on a good account of himself. Much like Paqueta, yeah. But look, it was better. But it still just wasn't good enough.